All right, everybody. Welcome to the BASSCAST. Today, I am joined by Dakota Welch and Nate Stuckey from a company called Rooted Agriculture. I met Dakota about a year ago at the Green Cover Regenerative Nexus in Omaha, and at the time, what they were doing was a little bit different than what they're doing now. We had seen each other about 10 days ago or so in Kansas, and figured we'd get on here and be able to talk a little bit about what you guys have going on. 'Cause I think what you have going on is it's really really great, and I think it's could really open up some eyes and help people be successful. So, Dakota, why don't you explain a little bit of who you are, a little introduction, and then the same for you, Nate.
Yeah. So my name's Dakota. I with Rooted Agriculture, and really I've spent up to really most of my career has been in agricultural lending. I worked in the farm credit system for just shy of 10 years. And kind of in that time, I mean, I got to see really just in the farm credit system, you get to see a lot. You get to see all sorts of different operations, sizes, scope. Um, I worked with small family farms, larger operations, absentee landowners, part-time, full-time, row crop, cow calf. I mean, you really kind of get a feel for a little bit of everything, honestly. And so did that mostly in eastern Kansas, northeast Kansas, and then west central Missouri near Harrisonville, Missouri. And yeah, the last probably 5 or 6 years of it, is really when I kind of started getting kind of a deep dive into just the soil, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the soil health movement, regenerative agriculture. That's really when I started, I kind of came into it with sort of already a curiosity about it. I've always been somebody that appreciated conservation, but this sort of kind of gave me a little deeper sense of what it was all about. And I haven't really been able to look away since. Yeah, I saw sort of the opportunity that it brings to the farm operations. Really what got me excited about it was, farm operations can really become, I guess, really more resilient and independent in what they do. And so one of those things I thought, I don't know how I can contribute to this in a deep, impactful way in my current seat as a lender. Farm credit does a great job in how they serve clients, but I thought, I want to see if I can step away from what I'm doing to serve this at a different angle, just kind of from a different lens. So left my farm credit job year and a half ago, well, April of 2023. So I guess a little over a year and a half ago. And at the time when I left, one of the things I saw as a lender is I mentioned I worked with a lot of absentee landowners, and this is really something I never really, in my own little bubble growing up, I didn't know this, but uh, absentee landowners will often hire farm management companies to work on their behalf, similar to what a property management company does for people that own, rental homes and commercial properties. And so I kind of got to see how those companies serve absentee landowners. And I thought, if anything, maybe I can sort of break into it from that angle. I was starting to meet landowners, not saying it's status quo, but it would meet landowners that are starting to see the value and sort of seeing their operations managed, seeing their farmland managed in this way. I mean, you're building soil organic matter, you're sort of improving water infiltration and all these sorts of long-term benefits that come out of regenerative management. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll sort of start to carve out a niche there, and I can work with some clients in that capacity. So that was really April 2023. Fast forward, probably roughly July of 23 is when I met my my partner Reese Alger, who's not on this call, but Reese has a background in software engineering. He lives in New York City. He's from London, so I'm thinking, what in the world does this guy have to, how does he have any interest in this? But Reese and I, we met actually online. American Farmland Trust has an online forum where they basically just kind of link people that are interested in kind of similar things, all sort of tied back to conservation agriculture. So
Sure.
anyway, long story short, Reese and I met there. I said, "Hey, what are you working on?" Reese said, "Well, I'm trying to build a software management tool, a management tool that helps basically capture all of the various data points that come out of this kind of management, this sort of intentional management that where we're managing to build soil health." And at the time, it was very foggy. I do not have a software background uh, at all. I'm married to a software engineer, and that's about as far as it goes. And so I thought, well, I mean, I guess, I'm interested to know more. And so Reese and I got to talking pretty regularly. We started doing, daily Zoom calls and whatnot. I got to really slowly over time understand what it is that he was building. And long story short, we decided to partner together and put together what is now Rooted Agriculture. And so it's evolved a lot. He and I were both sort of in the mindset of let's build something that helps from a landowner perspective, particularly a non-operating absentee landowner, get the type of management that they want, this intentional, regenerative management. We bring a plan to them, a management plan to them that's done by a third party because neither one of us have a background in agronomy or any of those sorts of things. So we will lean on a third party, someone like Understanding Agriculture or maybe Advancing Eco Ag or Dale Strickler. Really, we said, as long as they have a deep,
Right.
understanding of soil health and ways to implement this into a production system, we don't really care who it is because there's ones out there. So let's lean on them, embed their advice, their consultative advice into a software platform that basically that that farm manager can look at daily and then start to get daily, almost not necessarily daily, but just get data-driven guidance
Sure.
out of for their operation out of that. So basically takes the advice and then starts to pull in, various data points from, weather data and market data and just, soil health data. We start with the soil test. That's kind of where we start with a lot of these on the
Sure.
ground level. Then we start to kind of learn, how can we take intentional management and then start to, be more adaptive in what we do, how we manage operations, knowing that we're going to try to integrate soil health principles is kind of the bedrock of how we manage our operations. So that was sort of kind of what we started with. And so we've kind of today, one key learning we had early on is that we learned that we were a little early in trying to serve the absentee landowner because unless they have an operation that is sort of also on board and willing to kind of take their management in this direction, it sort of stops in its tracks. And that's kind of what we found. We the first 4 or 5 landowners that said, "Yeah, we'll be your guinea pigs." Well, it was great. We got to work with them. We got to bring them a farm management plan that incorporates regenerative principles and give them a tool to sort of take that direction and start collecting the data that comes out of it so they can see the outcomes. But where we were sort of starting to fall short is we didn't have buy-in from their current tenant. And one of the things we said early on is we don't really care to be the party that comes in and disrupts the relationship with a tenant and their landlord. I mean, that's some of those,
Right.
Those relationships go back literally generations. So we said, somebody else can do that. We don't care to be that party. And so we said, we took a step back and we said, let's start to work with farm operations that, we've sort of identified operations that show up to things like no-till on the plains and events like what you and I saw each other at last week. So that's really kind of who we want to target. We want farm operations that are wanting to go this direction or wanting to adopt soil health. And we think we have a tool that would be, useful in helping them, go that direction. So
Yeah, I remember when you and I had first spoke, it was the initial concept of what the plan was almost like a matchmaking service for landowner and operator to kind of make those things meet in a positive way, if you will. And it seems like it's definitely evolved from them. We'll get a little bit more into it here moving forward. Nate, how'd you get tied into all this with Rooted? What's your background?
Well, so let's see. I'm from South Central Kansas. Kind of grew up, both sides of my grandparents had cattle and were in row crop production. Didn't really carry on with either my mom or dad's generation doing it. We still have quite a bit of row crop ground kind of in the Mound Ridge, Newton area. I went to KU, it's where I met Dakota. It was actually both of us got degrees in economics. I'd always known that I kind of had wanted to at some point have some piece of my own land, running my own cattle, kind of doing my own thing. Um, I think you, Dakota, found a piece of ground first, kind of close to where he was originally from out here in Southeast Kansas. He bought a piece, and then another piece came for sale, caddy corner to him. So that's how I got started getting the cattle operation up and going. Didn't know too much about it getting into it. Just knew that we wanted to do grass fed because we were a smaller scale operation. We knew we couldn't compete with the big boys on how they were doing their operations. And then once we kind of started going down that grass fed route, you start reading, you start doing a lot of things online, YouTube, you look up Greg Judy and you see Gabe Brown, Steve Campbell, like the list can go on and on of names. Really kind of fueled the fire of the regenerative path. And I was doing finance, advisory services for a bank up in Kansas City, and it always kind of just was constantly being drawn back to the farm, and that's kind of where I knew I wanted to go. And when Dakota got started on this operation, I think he kind of could see my frustrations and where I was going in my career, and not really happy with day to day what I was doing. And so eventually he just said, "Hey, I think there's an opportunity for you to come on board. I know you're passionate about this. Let's see if we can make a go of it." And here we are.
Wonderful. Oh,
We can't seem to get away from each other. We went to
Yeah,
college together. We run a few cattle together, and
I think I actually got
it's
you to
like
come first job out of, maybe not first job, but I got he came over and joined the first place that I was working out of college for a while, and then we kind of went our own ways professionally, but had the land together. Did a lot of different things, trying to, I guess, kind of be movers and shakers. Things that get the other farmers to talk about us at the local coffee shop.
so one of the things on your guys' website where it talks about like your mission statement, what your goal is, and that's to unlock the full potential of agricultural land by enabling some of these practices that are out there. So what are the steps that you guys are going through to try to achieve that?
yeah. So well, we're firm believers in the principles of soil health, which um, I can save that for another discussion where we hope that people listening are either already aware of those, or if not, we would encourage you to learn those principles. But, that being said, one key principle is context. And, we think, it seems logical to kind of start with understanding context before you even begin to think about keeping the soil armored and living root in the ground and integrating livestock and what have you. And so we said, let's start with that. So kind of the first step in our process with anybody is we do a context report. So we come out, and it can be in person, it can be, that's the thing with us. And I learned this as a lender. You sort of have to meet people where they're at. Everybody works differently. Some people are,
Right.
they want to look at everything on their phone and do everything on their phone. Others want the in-person. Some people want to sit in front of a desktop. So we're a pretty flexible company at this point anyway. We try to, do that. So, but at any rate, we gather a context report where we're doing things like I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. We're trying to understand as best we can, what is your context? So we start with just simple questions like, what are your goals for the operation? Where have you been up to this point? What have kind of been what's been the sort of the status quo for this operation, if there is such a thing in terms of practices, and who's involved? Is it, because there's always that dynamic of, if it's father son generation, maybe the son wants to take all of these things and run with it, but the dad's still holding on to the reins. So it's like we need to know all of those sorts of things, all the various dynamics that play into it. As much as we can, we try to learn, what are some of the financials, or at least understand, I worked as a lender for 10 years, so I know a lot of people like to hold their cards close, but as much as we can learn and, in this setting where we can sort of start to see, okay, what are kind of some of the parameters, knowing that you want to go this route with your operation and start, be intentional about, doing things more regeneratively. How can we help you? Because, we think we don't think there's a place on the planet where these, regenerative principles can't be adopted. But that being said, it's going to look a lot different depending on, your unique context. So that's sort of the big step. The first step is we get a context report, we gather that, and then we give a physical, PDF version of that or paper version of that to the client. So we say, hey, do you think this captures your context? Like, get the buy-in there.
Sure.
And then from there is really when we start diving into, we start with soil testing. We're using RegenAg labs because we're trying to get, look at like some PFLA reports, and we're trying to measure soil organic matter, and, some of the things that maybe a conventional soil test might not capture is, we want to do that because we want to establish a baseline. And then, so that's kind of step two. And then along with that is when we would engage with a third-party consultant that, again, we're not captive to any one consultant, at least at this time. And there's a few reasons for that. One, I think, big reason that stood out to us is there's kind of almost a cult-like following within these like regenerative groups, where one might say, I'm going to follow the Greg Judy sort of holy grail and not spend any money and just focus on kind of making sure I have good fence and water sources, and I'm going to let animal impact sort of take care of the rest. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And then there's others that will say, oh, you need to sort of boost some of this and get, you really have no life in the soil. So you need to sort of probably going to need to spend some money to get the life, sort of at least woken up in that soil. And, maybe that's biologicals. Maybe it's, killing out part of your fescue pasture and planting it to, a more diverse warm season mix. Whatever it may be, we found that, hey, you know what? We're going to probably really limit ourselves if we lean on one sort of school of thought. So rather than do that, let's just find out what sort of we think is going to serve the goals of the operation, match them with a consultant that, we think can deliver that direction. And so our first handful of clients, we actually worked with Dale Strickler from Regenerative Wisdom. A lot of people in sort of this space do recognize his name. And so Dale, how he worked with us is, he goes out on farm, does an on-site consultation, and then he puts together, in our case, I think it was like an 80-page report of everything from, here's some things to be considering in your grass system, from, different things to be like, we're in fescue country. So we used it for our own farm, and we said, obviously we have too much of one species. So he gave us a handful of different strategies to use in addressing how do we break out of this predominantly monoculture fescue system and to fight fescue, where, our cattle are only really getting a few months of really high quality nutrition out of it. We want year-long grazing and possible. So things like that, to grazing management, what kind of grazing system should we be considering, to everything in between. It's a pretty extensive report. And so where we come in with the software is we take that report from the consult, and it starts to get embedded into the platform, to where really what that does is, it kind of gives that operation a starting point to start, they're starting to see sort of their direction from that consult down to as much as they want. It could be a daily basis, but we also think, well, are guys really going to take advice daily? Some might not. It's just, to each their own. But we said at any rate, they have that consistent direction, and whatever practice that they start to deploy in their operation, that's when the data collection really starts to kick in, because part of what we're doing is sort of, direction and advice, but the other part of it is capturing outcomes that come out of these practices, to where whether they worked or not worked, or did it work, what did we see out of them? Did we increase soil organic matter? Did we increase, what things came out of that? Because, example of it is, we said, we were talking about a rye planting we had recently, and we said, well, we might get a really good forage out of that this year, or it might, come up to, an inch tall and we got nothing. But even if we get no forage, there's probably some things going on under the ground that we're not seeing. And so we want to know all of those things. And so capture the data. And then we also, part of the software is intended to do, is it helps us adapt our management plan. So we're always sort of evolving it. And, we're trying to mimic nature, and we don't think that the human mind does a very good job of trying to mimic nature, at least not right now. So we're trying to see how can we use tools that help us sort of augment this approach, where we can always be sort of adapting our management. So that's kind of how the tool works. It's sort of quasi AI consultant, you might say, and then the other piece of it is, like I said, data collection. So yeah, that's sort of really where it is today. You're looking at 2/3 of our team. It's Nate, myself, and our partner Reese, and then we're actually in the process of bringing on Reese is he's bringing on another engineer, hopefully by mid-January. We're pretty close to, or I should say, he's pretty close to closing in on it. I don't know the first thing about hiring a software engineer, but I say all that because we definitely expect this tool to do much more than what it does in its current form.
Sure, I assume that getting more guys signed up on the program, learning what their needs are independently, but then that can also help guide what you guys are going to be building and growing it moving forward. And it's probably just the evolution is probably never ending with what you
Right.
guys
Absolutely. It's definitely twofold, where we appreciate getting all the data from them and stuff that they want to see. I think we're pretty open and honest. We'll take all feedback. It doesn't mean that we can necessarily implement it,
Sure.
especially because we don't, like we just said, we don't have that software engineering background. I don't know the first thing about building those out, but we can always, it's pretty easy for us to chase up the flagpole to see if it's something we can incorporate, which is pretty nice.
I mean, for where it was at a year ago to where it's, what the program is now has definitely evolved and definitely changed and for the better, in my opinion. I love what you guys are doing. So we go from kind of doing like a farmer's needs analysis, putting all that data together, presenting to them with steps or a plan, and then moving forward. So if I say, hey, I want you guys to come out, take a look at what we have going on here. Here are my pain points. Here's what I want to do. You guys provide that plan, and then what happens after that?
So yeah, after that is really when after we brought out the plan and gotten them onboarded onto the platform, it's really just that's really when we're starting to put the tool to work. Nate, I don't know if you want to step in and talk about your role and what you do as a farm manager, because Nate's really kind of he's our implementation specialist right now. So
Yeah.
he sort of helps, with sort of the, once they're onboarded. Yeah, I guess I can have you kind of discuss some of that. So
yeah, so it's just, like you said, getting them onboarded, going through there. I mean, and then it's a pretty detailed process to get them going. Like, when we come out, we do the farm consultation. We're going to come out. We're also going to look at, what water infrastructure you have, what fencing infrastructure, what equipment you have, all of that, because putting together the best plan in the world is great, but if we don't have the capabilities or the finances to make it work, then we're not doing you any service. And then from there, it's just working directly with the farmer or the operator in step-by-steps what we're doing, where we're at, tracking the data, getting feedback from them saying, is this working? Were you able to make these changes that we wanted to see? Were you able to get that cover crop put in? Were you able to get that 80 acres you were looking at fenced like we wanted to talk about, or get that cross fencing in, those sort of things. So it's a constant feedback with me and the operator, what's going on, and then having them use that tool to track their data, what's going on, be more intentional, I guess, to some degree with trials that they're doing. We found out through a lot of this that people have done trials kind of just by accident, like some equipment didn't work, or it put down too much of something, or it didn't spray anything at all. And it's like, okay, well, it's like, how do we track that? Okay, now we know we can be intentional, and you've got a way of providing that feedback through the platform that we can look back on. And it's kind of one of the things that I really personally liked about it was I'm a big note taker, and so I like to journal, and I like to sit down and just write out, this is what we saw on the farm today. This is what was going on. Forage was X amount height. We moved the cattle into this area, such and such. But found that I wouldn't go back and look at it as often as I should and review what was happening and what notes I was taking. It's just kind of writing to write. But with this software now, I can go back and I can easily see what we did and why, and we're definitely more intentional with how we're trying to do things.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It seems, having that being more intentional. Not that people aren't observing what they have going on their land, but sometimes it does take something to put it all together and present it in a way that can either open their eyes up a little bit differently, or they pay maybe a little bit more attention than, like you said, just writing a note somewhere and putting it out there. It's like a CRM for a sales organization to understand and kind of help build that pipeline for them, where we're doing it to kind of help the pipeline of soil health or herd health or forage quality or all these different things. And I love it.
Yeah, we were talking with a farmer today, and we were talking about, we take a lot of photos, and then you go back and look at your phone 3 months later, and you're like, why did I take this photo? What is this for? Unless you've got it and uploaded it and you're documenting why you took it and what you're trying to accomplish, you lose a lot of that information and that data through time. And you think, oh, I'll remember what I did or what I was doing, but you put it down, you go on to something else, and the next project happens, and you forget.
Yeah, the amount of notes I've taken on a napkin that ended up becoming a coaster and destroyed, end up lost to the ether. So it is nice to have something there that's kind of a data bank, and I think that we're at a place in time where there are resources that are available that some people might not have thought that could be helpful to what they have, and now you guys have a tool that can kind of tie in, kind of a technological side of things to agriculture in a different way, outside of just a fancy computer screen in a combine or something. So it's really nice to see kind of a true management type software for a farm operation.
One of the things I can't say too much yet, I guess, because I'm not sure how much it's going to be adopted, but everybody's trying to do something with AI right now.
Yeah.
And we're not special. We're one of them. So, and one of the things that one of the functionalities of the platform that Reese has built out in this is, and I guess to step back, we're a little bit probably more focused. Our tool is probably a little more designed to serve grazing operations. I'd say at least at this time of day, and that's not to say we don't serve row crop operations, because actually someone we just met with today that we're going to be working with, he's a couple thousand acres row crop, but he's integrating livestock into the operation. That's really, I think, where our sweet spot is. And so I just say all that to give you a little bit of context. So one of the things that we're doing with the AI is, I told Reese early on, I said, I had a hard time as a lender just even getting sometimes operations to give me a financial statement. That was hard. And I always thought it seemed like the easiest thing in the world to do, but just even that was a hard thing to get, that was a hard data set to pull together sometimes. So I said, I can imagine trying to get, a guy to give me just, almost daily guidance if it's a grazing system on this. So one of the things that the AI does is operator has a lot of different ways to log data. So one of the cool ways with the AI is they get a phone call from a sort of just an AI voice, and that operation can log quickly grazed, the triticale rye mix down to X height today on X number of acres, moving them into this paddock, and we had this amount of rainfall. So it's like they're just logging like all sorts of little data points that they would have, to Nate's point, maybe have been putting in a journal. And then that all feeds back into the platform so that they can go back and see later on where the dashboard is, and then that recalibrates sort of the next day of grade or the next decision, if that makes sense. So and that's sort of like, it sounds pretty high tech, but it feels pretty low tech I think to the operation, because it's like they're getting a call and it's like, okay, I didn't have to do much there. I just answered my phone and said a few words, and now it's that's gonna plug into my data set, and it's going to help me be more adaptive. Hopefully, it's kind of the intent with it anyway. Um, there's other ways to log it, like we've got text features and things like that. Just a few things like that I like to talk about because it sounds cool. We'll see. The cat, not out of bag yet in terms of will it be used, because that's always the thing with any type of new tech. It's like it's only as good as
Right.
it's only as good as, I guess, as well as used. So
Right.
anyway, but yeah, that's we'll see how well it gets utilized.
So if you have a producer that's out there that is wanting to know a little bit more about what you guys are doing, what is the process or the steps of getting them? How do you want them to get a hold of you guys? What's the best way? Where can they get more knowledge?
So right now we have our website out there, which has a couple of really good demo videos that we put out, because one of the things we learned early on is like we can talk about these things all day, but it's
Right.
this thing we're doing, and we recognize it's a little novel. So and it gets to be almost abstract sounding. So we said we need to just be able to show this to the
Right.
universe. So I put together a couple of Loom videos where somebody can log in, see sort of, they can hear from us in terms of what the process looks like, which is kind of what we just talked about, to what the actual tool looks like, at least in its current form. And they kind of get to navigate through that. So that's all out on the website. We do have a LinkedIn presence, and then, yeah, we're just now starting to ramp up a lot of our social media
Okay.
presence. So we really don't have much yet. So stay tuned for that. I think we expect to be able to be seen on, Facebook and all of the various
Right.
social media
Yeah.
accounts soon. But right now, rootedag.com is the website. So good place to come and
Yeah,
check out.
and I'll down here in the comment section, I'll make sure I'll put your guys' website that's up there, and then an email is what
Yeah, email, phone number, either is great with both of us.
Beautiful. And then you guys want to give the the email info@rootedag.com. We'll get to you guys, and then how about a phone number to call if somebody is watching and says, "I like this and I want to give them a call right now."
Yeah, you can just reach out directly to me. It's 316-772-2475.
Okay. Beautiful. Well, and I appreciate what you guys are doing, because I think that there's a large segment of the population that has been taking a look at maybe shifting a little bit towards a more regenerative way of their operation, and some guys just it's like drinking from a fire hydrant. Sometimes there's so much stuff that's out there where you don't necessarily know where to go or where to turn to, because you could be listening to two guys or gals that are absolute experts in what they're talking about, that could give slightly contradictory points of view on certain things. But but once again, it has to deal with what the context of the operation is, to find out what's going to make the most sense for them. But I think that if anyone's watching and you want to know a little bit more about how to maybe shift some levels of your operation to be a more regenerative way, reach out to Dakota or Nate, and they'll answer any and all of your questions. Guys, thank you. I appreciate it. I think that people will take something away from here, and hopefully someone will give you guys a call and take some steps to move forward to change the way their operation is a little bit. You guys got any final words?
Just that, yeah, we thank you for the time. I think,
Sure.
anything we can
Thank
do
you.
to kind of get the message out, all the better. And yeah, I guess, yeah, we want to invite any operation that kind of wants to really start to make intentional changes to talk to us. We're pretty, I think, we don't have it all figured out. We have our own farm operation, and you can drive by and see that we don't have it figured out. But this thing we're doing, we're trying to figure out how can we continuously learn and get better at what we're doing. So we think we've got a pretty good tool for that. So
I agree. I messed around on it and checked out the Loom videos, and I liked what I saw, and hopefully we can get some more eyeballs on it. Well, thank you guys for the work that you're doing, and shoot, I'll probably see you guys next month or the following month, and
sure
we'll
we'll be
catch up
making
then.
more rounds.
But once again, yeah, thanks for joining. I'll make sure I put all the links in here underneath for you guys and some of the information. Once again, thank you guys for the time.
Yeah, appreciate it, Andrew. Take care.
Okay.
And I'm gonna just stop the record, and then we can go from there.